Ferrari F12tdf review. What is it? It's Ferrari's limited edition, powered-up, pared-down F12tdf, seen here prowling UK roads for the very first time. We've driven it before in sun-kissed Italy, after which our estimable Matt Pryor concluded, quite rightly, that it was a car that takes some learning. Transfer 1,000 miles to the northwest, drop the temperature 20 degrees C or so and swap the hills around Myrna for a wet Welsh mountainside and we can probably upgrade the judgment to take some learning, unwavering concentration, a reasonable chunk of talent and every crumb of courage you can muster. We'll get to why that is in the next section. For now, however, let's examine a little more closely exactly what we're dealing with here. Ferrari will hate me for saying this, but the F12tdf is, in its basest sense, a run-out special. The F12's much modified, but not entirely new, successor will be with us next year, so Ferrari needs something to maintain interest in the meantime. Some 799 are being built and offered to favored owners for £339,000 a pop before they play fast and loose with the options. In broad terms that's £100,000, an Aston Vantage V8 S plus change, more than the F12. You'll only stop snorting when you realize what, in addition to rarity value, that buys you. You get a car that's 110 kilograms lighter than the F12 thanks to the deletion of most of the interior and the addition of much carbon fiber both inside and out, where both bumpers, the front wings, all the additional aero devices and much of the underside are now made of the material. The entire aero package is upgraded to almost double the amount of downforce, with aggressive dive planes at the front, a bigger wing at the back and even a different angle for the rear screen in between. The chassis gets springs stiffened by 20%, revised dampers and a four-wheel steer system, the latter to balance the fact that the front tires are now 2 sections wider, while those at the back remain unchanged. But as ever with a Ferrari, it is the powertrain to which your attention clings most keenly to you. The engine retains its 62 cc capacity but its power is raised from 730 bhp to 770 bhp, which is 123 bhp per liter without a turbocharged in sight. It's been done partly by letting it breathe a little better but mainly by replacing hydraulic tappets with mechanical items which permit it to rev a little higher. Peak power now comes at 8,900 revolutions per minute instead of 8,500 revolutions per minute. You might want to allow yourself a moment to imagine what a Ferrari V12 developing 770 bhp at 8,900 revolutions per minute sounds like. The 7-speed gearbox offers even more rapid shifts in both directions. What's it like? Easy, forgiving and surprisingly docile. Just some of the words that will never be used by anyone to describe what this car is like to drive. From the moment the mighty V12 blasts into life, this car lays down a challenge. The prize is a driving experience unique among road cars, and yes, I include the McLaren P1, LaFerrari and Porsche 918 in that, the price being that you're going to have to fight every inch of the way to get it. There is little this car does to make life easy for you. On the user-friendly side, while the ride is now very hard, it remains impressively smooth, and the car is still quite quiet on the motorway and it still has a surprisingly big boot. The thin bucket seats with their 4-point harnesses are brilliantly supportive, too. So the standard F12 superb long-distance credentials, while degraded, remain intact. But sooner or later you're going to want to drive it fast, and if it's cold and or wet, I wish you luck. Firstly, it tries to deter you. On country roads those fat front tires hunt about like bloodhounds following a scent, and on Pirelli Corsa tires and with super stiff springs, traction can be challenged even just easing away from quiet junctions. The traction control can't always keep up even in its wet setting. The car retains the F12 super aggressive off-center steering response despite the four-wheel steer's ability to effectively lengthen the wheelbase. And when the back goes, you'll need to be as fast with a corrective lock as I've known a road car from a mainstream manufacturer to require, just to make sure it doesn't stay gone. And yet there's this other thing going on too. The car has an addictive quality that makes you feel like a moth drawn to a flame. The TDF is so hard to drive in difficult conditions, so different indeed, that you find yourself fascinated, fixated even, on finding out more. Partly this is because of the engine, the most free-spinning, free-spirited, simply bloody heroic road car power plant I can recall, more unhinged in its appetite for revs even than that in LaFerrari. But there remains this suspicion that if you are able to bend it to your will, or even adapt yourself to its way of doing things, something sublime awaits. And even on the narrow, wet and cold roads that must comprise a TDF's worst nightmare, it proved to be one of the most exciting cars I have ever driven.